Hey guys, Josh here. Today's episode is one I am genuinely very happy to be bringing to you. It's with an amazing person, Mark Pearce, who is the author of one of, if not the best books on creativity I've read probably in over a decade. And he happens to be a very accomplished graphic artist, musician, designer, and about 100 other things, and photographer. So he's a multi-talented person and he's a super nice guy. Let's jump in with yet another person that has a much better accent than I do, Mark Pearce. Let's do this thing.
Mark, you've done work for the BBC, Sky, PlayStation Magazine, your favourite football club, which I want to talk about what you did for them specifically. You seemed really excited on a video I saw, the Hull City Football Club, from memory. And I guess what fascinated me most about yourself beyond the book is just so extraordinary to me is that you're a multi-creative, something that I've always aspired to be, but you've really excelled in multiple fields. Can you give us just a little 411 on Mark Pearce and maybe what you've done creatively over the years?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, well, it's my whole working life. It's 25 years plus. It's been creativity from day one. I guess my early career, I was bouncing around through design agencies. So I did a lot of design agency work, bouncing around them, got to like middle management type thing where you started becoming less hands-on. And that I didn't like that. Because I was then managing people, which is like herding cats is herding designers. So I got out of that and then decided to just work on my own terms. And I had there was never a job that fit what I was interested in because I'm just insatiably curious, I think. So if I was going to work as a designer, I couldn't do photography. And if I was going to work in music, I couldn't do the others. So I ended up jumping ship and working on all three, making my own job up. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in terms of what the big clients were all the agency work, like the BBC, the ITV, and stuff like that. Did a lot of broadsheet newspaper design work. Did design some of the weather forecast panels. The little clouds and stuff like that for a lot of the major British newspapers.
I'm assuming they have to be very precise too.
Dear, you get 1 degree off and they're on the phone. If you get anything slightly incorrect, a spelling or a temperature conversion out, it was So the last 12, 14 years or whatever, it's a mix of design, photography, and music. I mean, for example, this past fortnight, I've done some food photography and some video for a local restaurant. I'm working on design for a workbook for young adults processing grief. I've done some session guitar for a country song. I mean, what job can you do? Can you find that's that kind of mix? And another one I did as well, which I loved, was I do quite a lot of headshots, just head and shoulders photography in my little studio here. And I got this gentleman in who was 80 years old. He's the oldest client that I think I've had. And he wanted an update on his headshots. He used to work as an actor in the West End in his younger days, and he brought his photos in from 60 years ago. They were when he was 20.
Wow.
And so we talked all about that, and he just wanted to have photos of himself now from when he was all those years ago. And so it's moments like that you can't get in a standard corporate office design job. It's like that's what brings me alive, that kind of stuff.
I'm just so fascinated by this individual you've just mentioned that now my brain's pinging with 1,000 different things, but we're going to try and stay on you for just a little bit there. One expression that I loved from the book was, and I think it might have been early in the book actually, was where did the art go? I think it might have actually been a chapter name. So you were always in the creative field, but it sounds like you've also managed to rediscover and kind of have had to build a path to that discovery by creating your own job and studio and all these things. You've either never really lost the art or reclaimed it. Is that an accurate statement, do you think?
Yeah, I don't think I've kind of lost it and found it and lost it and found it in different areas, I think.
Yeah.
You know, it's like almost like the process you've just described it was almost like especially when you're young, you kind of focus on one thing because that's all your head can cope with. And then it's like you drop that. Well, I dropped that for a while and then pick something else up.
Yeah.
And then something else becomes intriguing and I'll drop that and pick that up. And then after a while, I kind of cycled around them all. So I've kind of, my competence level has increased over them all. So it's not like I do them all the time because my head would explode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I have rediscovered it. For example, just about this time last year, I've rediscovered pencil sketching. And when I thought back, I don't think I've picked up a pencil and actually drawn something probably for 20 years to actually do a finished picture. And that's something I rediscovered and thoroughly enjoyed it.
And was that part of your work previously, or was that something you did in your school years? Like when you say 20 years ago, what was that last time?
Oh, do you know, I don't even, I'm guessing that's a wild guess. When I was serious about it, it was at school. You know, it's probably 14, 15 when that was something that I was really, really good at. And I enjoyed, but then you don't leave school and then go, are there any jobs doing pencil sketching? You know,
No, correct.
You know, there wasn't a lot of call for that where I grew up. So that's the kind of thing that you fell by the wayside. But I ended up doing a drawing that I then gave to my mum as a gift for Christmas, and she loves it. You know, and it's been a talking point for people that have been visiting her when they come and visit. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Why I brought up where does the art go, or where did the art go? And you've just brought up those teen years. I think from reading your work and other people's work that I've mentioned before, that does seem like a time where what could seem like innocuous comments can become creative wounds, and maybe as an individual statement or day or bad experience or whatever, they're not enough to throw someone off course, but myriad of those things over the course of a couple of years when maybe you're sensitive to new hormones and all the things that are going on in your life and you're trying to, like, what am I going to do with my life? Like, it's all happening all at once. Those can become deeper creative wounds. And is that partly what kills the art in a lot of people?
I think it is, yeah. When you're young, you're generally speaking, if you've got a reasonably stable upbringing, you're free to explore and you're free to play, even into your teen years and whatnot. That's when I picked up the guitar and that's when I started playing, and you're free to explore. There's no pressure. When you become an adult and you transition into that place, there's the expectation that you grow up. And it's like Picasso said, didn't he? He said it's like every child's an artist, but the problem is how to remain one when you grow up.
Yeah.
And the responsibilities of life can knock that out of you. And I think we're taught in much of our education establishments, and then how work functions, is that everything's pretty much binary or like dualistic, where everything's either right or wrong. Your exams are, there's a right answer and there's a wrong answer. And so when we transition into that, when the world seems to be like that, creativity is full of experimentation and nuance and gray areas and successes and failures and discoveries. And when there's no space for that, I think that's when people lose the art.
Hey legends, super quick. If you're wondering where you can find any of the things that are mentioned in today's episode, head on over to myoldhands.com and you'll find it all there. Okay, let's jump back into the conversation.
When the world seems to be like that, creativity is full of experimentation and nuance and gray areas and successes and failures and discoveries. And when there's no space for that, I think that's when people lose the art.
Just through reading The Creative Wound, and also I've made a start on Brave Art, which is one of Mark's other books. And I didn't dig right into Braveheart only because I'm hoping if today goes well that he might come back in the future and we can dig into that in full. So that was strategic, but I reread The Creative Wound twice.
Good.
So I've been noticing patterns that I have that stem from that period. And one is that I can come across as very stoic, which is why people sometimes are shocked when I say I'm doing comedy and they come, and sometimes, on occasion, I can even make them laugh. They're not expecting that from me. But that was a massive shield for me because I am, as one of my friends found out this week who was trying to give me some creative criticism and positive feedback on something, incredibly sensitive. And I pretend that I'm not. And I want to pitch this to you. I'm not looking for psychiatric help here, mate. I'm just looking for your advice. But essentially, I portray that I'm open to direct feedback, but in my mind, I've got rules. And one of those rules is the timing of it. If you want to give me the feedback about something I've done, but it doesn't suit my timeline, maybe I'm still trying to enjoy the afterglow of some success I've had and I don't want to hear it at the time, I can get incredibly annoyed and upset and really, really, disagreeable about that feedback, whether it's well-intentioned or not. And it goes against what I've said to these same people that are in my world, that I'm open to it and I want you to tell me. But it's like I've built a cocoon around myself and I'll only open that door when I'm ready to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I've become more aware of since rereading the book particularly, that I know that because it's very present because it happened this week again, it's almost like I'm being inauthentic to a degree, that I'm asking for feedback, but then I've got conditions on it. But I track that back to when I was receiving a lot of feedback over the years and I wasn't processing it very well. I was just getting hung up on it being negative. So I think I built a mask, I think you might call it in the book, or a shield out of, well, if I ask for it, then I can dictate how it comes to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I don't know what you think about all that. I'm just kind of riffing here, but I'm sure sure with your amazing brain, you're hearing something that I should be thinking.
Oh dear. Well, it's not unusual. I think there is a lot to be said for timing, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think it's in The Creative Wound. I mentioned about personality types, and when you ask for feedback, I try to personally ask for feedback from certain personality types when I need certain comments. If I'm looking, say for example, when I'm starting a book project, when I start at the very beginning of it, I want to know if the concept is good. So I might send an article or a chapter or two to somebody who is brilliant at looking at the nuances of grammar. And all they'll do is come back to me with every comma that's out of place. And, the grammar police.
Yes. Yeah.
That's not what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is the whole idea, the 1,000-foot view. Is that good?
Yeah.
And sometimes the feedback can be useful, but at the wrong time, it's not useful at all, and it can be painful. A lot of us creative types are sensitive. That is what makes us able to be creative. It's a strength, but we do feel, and sometimes the pain's real when it touches a nerve. And the thing is trying to I don't know, I try to park it somehow, or collect the feedback and put it in a cupboard. Think, I don't need that right now.
Okay.
Do you get what I mean? And then maybe drag it out at a later point when you do need it, because otherwise you can become a bit of a control freak. And when you're trying to control everything, spontaneity goes out the window, and with spontaneity goes true creativity.
Yeah.
So you start shutting the whole thing down to where creativity actually is, you start doing it by numbers and trying to, do you get what I mean?
I do, absolutely. And it makes me think that this particular person, she's very close to me, and I rely on her for feedback about a lot of things. And the thing she was commenting on was something organizational, which she is an absolute genius at.
Uh-huh.
She's amazing at handling stress, like under pressure, and organizing things. And she didn't actually step outside of really what I would normally reach out to her for feedback or listen to her on as well. Just I thought I was riding this little wave of success after organising a thing. And that feedback came I thought, why would they choose that moment to say that thing? And I could have just done what you did and just thought, oh, well, their intentions were good. I see it as poorly timed. Maybe I need to park that in the in the parking cupboard, as we may call it for the rest of this conversation. I didn't do that. I dwelled on it and then got frustrated and then picked apart this person's criticism, even though it was a very structural, if you do this next time, this will work better. Yeah. So,
I think the one thing you can also do when it's like that, it's a brave move, but you can go back and ask the question you just asked. I wonder why you chose that time or why you thought that was helpful to me right now, and to try and get inside her head. And then that gives you the understanding of where she's coming from.
Yeah.
You know, that level of empathy can actually then disarm and diffuse what your interpretation. A lot of it's to do with translation and interpretation of events, I think. And we always see it through our lens, our backstory, our mindset, and that person was obviously wrong.
Yeah.
And when you see her side of it, it actually can disarm the wound and take down the pressure of it and the pain of it a little.
Yeah. So I guess where all that's going, Mark, is that I was building a wound for myself. That was self-inflicted. It was a friend that I'd given carte blanche to. If you ever have feedback about this, this, and this, I want to hear it. Don't ever hold back. And then I got annoyed about the fact that I got it, which is ludicrous, really. But not all wounds come externally. And I think as an adult, because your brain is fuller and you have more experience and you've met more types of people, I find now that I'm not as actually impacted by what could cause an external wound, like someone's words or thoughts or actions. I can brush a lot of that off. What I do find more difficult is not to create them myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that's something you've heard before or something you've thought about, but that's just how I find it. It's more self-generated at times.
Yeah. I think that's so true. And again, that comes from the operating system that we've picked up along the way, and it often stems right from the beginning. One interesting thing maybe to look at, if you're going into super psychology here, but going back into attachment theory. Have you heard of attachment theory at all?
Yeah.
Because I think some of that and how our primary caregivers or authority figures as we grow up, those voices can often be the voices that we hear speaking as we're into adulthood, or a version of them, almost like ghosts that live in your head, because that is what you've heard, and that's what's kind of formed the rails of your mind as you've grown up. How your mind works, how the pathways work, and I think that is how we can dismiss other people and their comments don't hurt as much, but ours, because they're formative and our head has been with us most of our lives, if not all of it.
Yeah.
And sometimes tracking back that, if you can, to actually then see the relationships or the words or the vile din type of things, by reinterpreting those, by stepping back as an adult. When you're a child, it's really hard to understand, because our brains are not fully formed till we're in our mid-20s anyway. So we feel stuff, but if we can step back as an adult, almost and then kind of go back into the memory and go back into the emotion of it, we can reinterpret things probably and usually more accurately, as a grown up.
That's fascinating. And I was just reading part of the book today. And I think that's why some of these things feel so present to me. Just in our conversation now, because I'm trying to do that self-work. Basically leading up to this conversation, those things have been milling around in my head. The other thing is, just in my experience, it's a lot harder to lie to yourself and put a mask up when you're inside it.
Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you're acting. You could put a brave face onto the world, but it doesn't always work to yourself. So
that's right.
I wanted to just maybe, for lack of a better term, not lighten things up a little bit, but maybe just go in a slightly different direction. This show at the crux of it is about overcoming creative blocks. And the creative wound, or a creative wound, is a block that we all have to deal with at some point. I was just wondering, just maybe in the context of something like writing The Creative Wound or the newer book, Brave Art, what type of blocks does someone that knows as much about creativity as you and has looked into this subject so deeply, what do you face?
It's no different to what you've just been describing, if I'm honest with you. Fear of failure is a big one. Have I got what it takes? The whole imposter syndrome. Who am I? Who am I to write this? What do I know about it? When there's, the war of art and the artist's way and these, these classics, huge, classics. Yeah. You're like, what have I got to contribute to the conversation? Oh, this is all the internal, it's just my head. Nobody else has said that to me. And, it's exactly as you describe, it's just me arguing with myself. When you lose control of it, when you sat writing or you sat working on a piece of music, like yourself playing something on guitar, or you're working on like a comedy routine, when you've got control of it, it's fine. But then when it's out in the public space, you lose control of it and it has to live on its own merit. And so the inevitable critique and evaluation and judgment that is going to come that you can't do anything about. That's a biggie that I don't enjoy the thought of,
That is scary.
Yeah, well, it is.
And for people at home, I can see, I wouldn't say a look of terror on Mark's face, but I've maybe made him think about something he hasn't thought about, at least maybe today, maybe just for today. And that was real. So what do you do then? You said that you have certain people you reach out to. Okay, this is my person I can go to about big ideas if you need some external feedback. So you've got a big idea person. I'm assuming at some point along the way you do have a commas and grammar person that's an absolute savior at that point. How much of you dealing with those blocks is external and how much is dealing with your own internal dialogue?
That's a good question. For me personally, I've learned so much throughout my life to overcome them myself that usually the external help is at a point where I know what I need, rather than I don't know what I need to overcome. I usually specifically know what I need and I go for that specific help. Like if I've got a toothache, I'll go to the dentist. I don't need the dentist to tell me I need help. I'm like, I need help. So it's that. It's more like I do know what I need.
Let me ask something else then. As someone that is so versed in creativity and the idea of creative wounds, and you are obviously familiar with the War of Art and maybe Austin Kleon and these people who talk about creativity, and I've been reading all these people, including yourself. What happens when none of the tools that you believe you have help get over the block? Does that add extra frustration? Because I'm sure you're thinking, look, I've built up a lifetime's worth of tools. Why am I, as Mark Pierce or Josh Liston, who's been doing all this reading and research and whatever, why am I stuck in this moment? Like I should have the systems to overcome this. That must be even more frustrating, I would think.
Maybe you see that as part of the adventure. Maybe you see that as part of the process.
I guess everything has its own challenges, though. Is that what you mean by the adventure? That not every creative block or creative wound can be dealt with, overcome, and processed in the same way?
Well, exactly, yeah. And it's, a lot of it can be to do with time and timing. If you're expecting to push a button and read a chapter in a book and suddenly everything's all okay, it's not necessarily going to happen. Some things are instant. Some things take a heck of a lot of digging and work and repetition and craft and grind. And, the creative block might be a skill issue. If you're trying to play a complex piece of music, the block might just be you need to keep practicing. You need to repeat and repeat and repeat till you get it. Or it might be the voice in your head of, somebody saying your playing was a violin when you were 7. Yeah. And that's a different thing that you need to overcome. And so it's if you're under pressure for a deadline, that's a tough thing. If you need to be creative to a deadline and you've got a client or whatever, that's a tough thing to overcome. But then you lean back on what you already know a little bit more. I think that is when you lean back on formula probably a little bit more than you go for complete experimentation.
I was hoping we could finish up, Mark, by talking about the new book. So I'm a little bit more familiar with it than maybe I led on earlier, but I am hoping you may come back on in the future and talk about it at length if you're up to that.
Love to.
How doesn't Brave Art connect to the creative wound? As your opinion, you're the author. This is your latest literary work, I think, from memory. So
it is, yeah, indeed, yeah. Yeah, it's the next step, really. That's how I've wanted to put it out there. The creative wound is designed to heal you up, get you back on your feet, get you walking again, get you functioning again. And Brave Art is it's much more a rallying cry to actually do something with the wholeness that you've got. To actually create something with less fear than you've typically had in the past. What you have, what we all have, as proven by the fact that you're responding to my book, we will all create something that resonates with and helps a particular group of people or a particular person. You've not got Stephen Pressfield chatting to you here or Julia Cameron. You've got me, which is bonkers, But what I put out there, it's resonating with you and has resonated with other people. And that's the likewise with your music, likewise with your comedy and your podcast, of which I've heard numerous ones since we started talking.
It's still mind-boggling for me, so thank you.
I've been so entertained by them. I think they're brilliant. Really, really have. I genuinely love listening to them.
Oh, that's amazing. So Brave Art is the rallying cry for people that have done some healing, and either whether they knew that they had things to deal with or maybe they became aware, maybe more so like me, where I can highlight different moments that maybe threw me off a creative path or also made me trust my potential less than what I may have. The book has helped me deal with some of those moments.
That's cool.
So just with Brave Art, and just to finish up, how was creating a book that had a different aspiration, a different intention, how was that different than creating the previous book for you? Because, you've really hit people right in the heart and the brain also, because you put a lot of science in the creative wound as well, in both areas of the body and the mind.
Yeah.
And the new book is more for the lack of a term, now we've got our shit together a little bit, guys. We're going on a journey here. So for you as a creator, how were they different?
In a lot of ways, they were not vastly different. It's all part of a process. And it's more like the creative wound is the foundation. I want to get people to where they're creating what is in their heart to do and making a difference in the world and being creatively fulfilled. And it's almost like the creative wound is the foundation. Without that, you're gonna struggle because you're gonna get to a certain point and then it'll all implode. Like we mentioned, the pop stars at age 27, and so the process really is just a continuation. I've just kind of had a gap of 2 years and I picked it up and carried on. So it's more. I'm just excited about seeing what people can create rather than what people can overcome and what they can create, because the world needs your art. The world needs your voice. And it's not just the corporate people. It's not just the big famous ones. On a grassroots level, everybody is creative. We all have something to offer. And, that's what Brave Art's about.
That's amazing. Well, Mark, can you just tell people that are listening where they can find you online, where you like to communicate online if you do, and and maybe just where to find the books? And one last question, why is there no audiobook when you are such a great communicator? I've seen your videos when you were introducing the creative wound. You spoke very well and you've got this amazing voice and you own a studio. I'm just putting a vote out there because we're podcast listeners here, an audio podcast. These people like their audio. Where are the audiobooks?
It's a good question. I need to get to it, don't I? It's that question of the 160 hours.
I've just made you a bit uncomfortable here, guys. He's moving on his chair.
Yeah, I know. I'm fidgeting about. don't know. It's a question of priorities, really. It's where, you've only got 168 hours in a week, and putting book 2 out was more of a priority. But I do intend to get around to the audios. Yeah.
Excellent. And where will they appear, and where can people find the current books?
The current books, basically Amazon is the only place you can get them at the moment. I do intend to go a bit wider with them, but on Amazon, any of the Amazons worldwide. Excellent.
And it's Revelator Studios?
It is. My website is revelator.co.uk, which is revelator.co.uk. And I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube as Revelator Studio. So you can find me on all 3 of those.
Excellent. And one last thing, what have you got going on in the studio? You talked about what you've done in the last fortnight you're super excited about. What's coming up in the current fortnight that has Mark Pearce super excited?
Oh, my goodness. How many things I've got.
He's looking all over the place like 1,000 post-it notes.
Yeah. I'm planning an album for a chap, a local singer-songwriter. He's going to be coming in the new year, so I'm kind of working through planning that. I've got a couple of album covers to design, and it's when we were talking about people's critique and stuff. I did a whole string arrangement for a song. I've been producing the song. I did the whole string arrangement, and I'll be deleting all of that.
Okay.
Because the client now doesn't want strings in it after doing the whole thing. So I'll be deleting that and getting over the creative wound that caused this morning.
Just export just the string section before you delete anything. Make sure you've got a copy.
It'll go back in again. This is what happens. In and out.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some music producers out there just nodding their heads like, the amount of things I've been asked to cut and then put back in later.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it comes with the territory. It really does.
That's it. Mark Pearce, thank you so much. Thank you for joining me at a slightly more agreeable time for me here in Australia and you in the UK. Doesn't normally work out that we're both awake. Normally I'm the one that's half asleep when I'm doing this sort of stuff, so thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure. It's been great to meet you, and thanks for the conversation, Josh.